This video shows you how to get your data from your Qualtrics survey into Jamovi. The intermediate step is to create an SPSS file. So you could actually analyze your data inside SPSS, but most students find Jamovi easier to use. I have the Qualtrics screen here. When you pull up your screen and click on Projects, you'll probably only see the one you did for this class, so it'll be easy to find. The survey I'm using is called 301 Sample Survey. It's an actual survey from a previous semester. It has data inside of it, 36 responses. It might look similar to something you did for this class. It has the what is your gender, what is your age question, which normally appear at the end of the survey. And this student was interested in news use and political affiliation. Your survey might have more questions. So how do we get this into Jamovi to look at the responses? If we go back to the top of the page, you'll see Data and Analysis. This gives us a quick look at the responses that this student received. It may take a while for the data to load, so be patient. If it says an error occurred retrieving your data, simply try again. Go back to the survey, click on Data and Analysis again, and it probably will pop up right away. Qualtrics sometimes takes as long as 2 minutes just to give you an error screen. But you can see that the responses that this student got last year, they got questions about the age, gender, education, how often they read the paper. Let's convert it now to an SPSS file. You get to SPSS by clicking on in the upper right-hand corner the box labeled Export and Import. You're going to export data and you're going to choose SPSS. Then click on Download. And you'll be provided with a link that you can save somewhere. I'm going to save it to my desktop. The next step is to launch Jamovi. If you've already seen the Jamovi instruction video, you know a little bit about this, but I'll assume you haven't yet. If you go to the hamburger icon in the upper left-hand corner and click on Open, when you go to wherever you saved your Qualtrics survey data, you can open it directly into Jamovi. What Qualtrics does is it gives you a lot of information that you don't really need. So you may have to delete some of these columns, but they're interesting to look at. It gives a start-stop date for the survey. It gives the IP address of the person who sent it. It even gives the geographical longitude, latitude, location of the respondent. All of these columns are interesting, but if you click on any individual column, you can delete that variable. So I'm deleting the column start date. You can delete as many columns as you want. If you hold down on the Shift key, you can highlight several columns at once, and then right-click, at least on a Windows machine, you can delete all those variables. It doesn't delete all the responses, it just deletes the columns. I also deleted the column that said that the survey was done in English. So here are your responses. You've got gender and age, some answers to questions about specific newspapers in question 3. Question 4 and question 7 are pretty much the heart of this survey, where you're looking at how frequently someone reads the newspaper versus whether they're a Democrat or a Republican voter or somewhere in between. Now that you've got your data inside Jamovi, you can save it out again as a file. Under the hamburger icon, you can do Save As. In this case, you can make it a native Jamovi file, and at this point you could give it a more meaningful name, like My File, where the word My would be your name. And I'm going to save that file as a Jamovi file. Let's look at the data analysis then that you would do for your method section using your excellent answers here to your survey. Let's move this screen over a little bit, and let's just take the columns one at a time. If you wanted to explore to see the gender description, as explained in the other video, you could bring up descriptives, turn off mean and median for gender and minimum and maximum. Leave missing on to see if there are any missing cases. and just take the variable for gender, which was question number 1, drag it over, and it tells you you had 36 cases, but one of them did not list an answer. They didn't even say prefer not to answer. They just simply left it blank. Not to worry, missing cases just aren't included in the final analysis for comparisons that use that particular variable. If you're not using gender, it really doesn't matter. There'll be 35 cases when you do your correlation. If you wanted to describe the age, you run into a little bit of a problem, and that is when you go back to explore the data and you choose variable 2, it tells you there were 36 people who gave a response, but it doesn't give you the mean. You don't really need the median. If you ask for the standard deviation, it doesn't tell you that either. That's because the way the question was written, it considered the response, the numbers as characters rather than the numbers as numerals. So you have to do a little bit of footwork if that happens to you ever. You just go back to the data screen and you click on setup and you put your cursor on the column that has the age in it. And we'll show you that for some reason the numbers that were the age were collected as if they were categories. By changing it to continuous, which is the little ruler icon, it fixes it. In fact, we can close this out with the up arrow. Now when we go to that descriptives box, it was able to calculate a mean age, a standard deviation, and tell you that the respondents ranged in age from 20 all the way up to 62 years old. That would go in your method section. You would also want to describe the variables that you're going to be correlating for your results. You probably didn't choose this topic, but let's just see how that would work. Again, you would go into your analysis button, choose exploration, descriptives, and choose questions 4 and 7, which were recorded as numbers rather than numerals. And indeed, down here at the bottom of the screen, no median, but you do standard deviation. The box at the bottom of the screen tells you that the average response to your question about newspaper reading was a 3.58, and for political party was 5.36. I think I recall that being a Democrat was a 7, and a Republican, pure Republican, would be like a 1. And so a 5.36 shows you that this person's sample was primarily leaning towards being Democrat. If you're ever wondering, well, how is that coded? You go to the data button up here, you turn on setup, you put your cursor on time of usually vote, and it drops down a box and tells you that always vote Republican was a 1 and that always vote Democrat was a 7. So even if you don't remember how you worded the question, Jamovi will answer that for you. So let's hide that and go back to the analysis. So you have enough information here on the right side of the screen to do your method section. In order to do the results section, you have to remember from the other video, or I'll tell you now, that correlating column 4 and 7 is done by choosing the regression analysis and the correlation matrix. So you're taking two variables, fourth question about newspaper readership and the seventh question about political party, and it gives you a correlation instantly. Down here in this box, it shows you that although it wasn't statistically significant, wasn't less than 0.05, it seemed to be pretty close. Maybe if this student had surveyed 60 or 70 people, that would have given the test enough power to be statistically significant. But it does show a correlation, a negative, inverse correlation relationship between political party and newspaper readership of 0.29. Again, you would have to figure out the direction of those variables to explain to me what your finding means. Well, that's just a quick look at how you can take data from Qualtrics, move it into Jamovi, and complete your method and results section for your project. See you next time.